Okay, well, it just hit 4:30. So if y'all don't mind, I'm going to start talking. This is the quickly fading memory of 70's video arcade games. Of course, I'll explain a bit more about what that means as we come to it. But hello, I'm Nate Lockhart, and this is the first PowerPoint presentation I've made since college. Yeah. Also, I learned these things have not, people don't expect anything different from them than they did 20 years ago. So that's good for me. I grew up in Rochester area, Rochester, New York, currently living in Buffalo. And yeah, go Bills. Yeah, I'm a nervous Nelly over that. But I'm a antiquated tech and pop culture enthusiast. I like a lot of old stuff, reel-to-reel, tape cassettes, movie projectors, and pop culture like old silent movies, turn of the century music, 60s stuff, anything like that, especially the more ephemeral stuff that's kind of been sort of forgotten. And I have a podcast talking all about it called Memory Machine. It's been a great outlet for that, so I don't put it on unsuspecting people around me, dump all that stuff. And I'm a compulsive tinkerer, so I love to mess around with hardware and that sort of thing, and building little things from schematics. And as you'll see in the next slide, also this comes around to video games, which, I went one too far. Here we go. So this has been one of my big ongoing projects. This is a book from 1978 called How to Design and Build Your Own Custom TV Games. Now what that means is not sit down at a computer and get coding. What this means is go to the Radio Shack, buy some logic chips, and put them together in order to make a video game. So this is all discrete hardware. And the book is about 500 some odd pages. This book right here is about 500 some odd pages of schematics and where to buy parts and all sorts of that fun stuff. And so here's what one of these, a couple of these builds look like. And you can see they're a little bit messy. It took me a bit to get them going. This one here is a tag game. So, the one square has to get the other square. And then when they touch, it beeps and they disappear. Very, very simple. You can see it doesn't draw too much power. I got it 9 volts and 0.13 amps. Yeah, that's not that bad. And over here is a pinball game. So that's another one of the schematics in the book. And that required, as you can see, a good deal more circuitry. What I did is I punched the schematics that were into the book into KiCad and was able to design boards, get them manufactured at a very small scale, and test them out. It all happened because I got that book when I was 9 years old at the LaGrange Public Library when I very briefly lived in LaGrange, Georgia, and they had that book, and this was in the mid-90s. And I wanted to build these games so bad, but nobody I knew anything about how to make it happen. So eventually, over the pandemic, I couldn't help myself anymore. And I brute forced my way into learning electronics, and that is the result. Okay, so let's put some of these games into context. Let's think about 1970s. Let's get the idea of what is the technology? What are we looking at here? This is your television set, right? It's a console. It sits on the floor with a nice green rug. That's probably the only TV in your house. In pop culture, I right-clicked when I should have clicked. There we go. In pop culture, this is what a computer looked like, right? This is what was in the public imagination. That's actually a 1950s computer that's being used as a prop in a Columbo episode. And Columbo, is probably very awkwardly asking questions about it. Let's see. And this was what an actual computer would have been. This would be a PDP-8, I believe. So this is what actually would have been used, for in a college or for payroll, something like that. And then This is the dashboard of a 1971 Buick Riviera. And just to help put you in the mindset, look at the, although I think this person retrofitted it with like an MP3. Don't pretend that's not there. And so we have, this is what this is what technology looks like. This is sort of kind of where we're at with technology. So from there, I'm going to talk a bit about like what sorts of games am I talking about. So when I say 70s video games, probably thoughts are to Pong and Space Invaders, and that's not entirely incorrect. But I'm going to try to help elucidate a bit about what that means. So I'm mostly referring to what they're colloquially called TTL games. Now, do they usually all use TTL logic? And they mix in CMOS and TTL low-power Schottky. I'm not going to get pedantic here. So transistor logic, meaning two transistors. If power goes into one, you could use it as like an inverter AND gate. We'll talk about that in a second. These predate the widespread use of microprocessors. So we're not using 8-bit CPUs, none of that stuff. That's not what's happening here. And these games are built entirely out of these dedicated generic logic ICs. There's no computer code to speak of. It's all done through hardware. The ROMs do get used on occasion. I'll talk about that in a bit. But it's mostly for graphic bitmaps. There's no code that's being executed, if that makes any sense. So these are some games that you might know. Breakout. I'm sure plenty of you know that game. Same thing with Pong. And Computer Space is probably, I would say it's the third most popular one here. But these are probably ones that you have heard of at some point, maybe even come across. The Atari 50 collection that came out recently has Pong and Breakout. Those two ones are available for you to play. Computer Space isn't on there. Get on an Atari. It's been available in FPGA form for 10 years now. So when I talk about the TTL logic and what that is, we're talking about this. So we have a little chip right here, and each of these logic chips can do different functions. This one in particular here is a NAND gate, so it performs the function of 2 input pins, 1 output. Once they both go high, the output goes low. This is a NOR chip, inverted OR, and so you have as long as one of the inputs is high, then the output will be low. Anyway, you can there's lots of different functions of these chips, and you can get them to build upon each other and cascade to make it do a video game. One of the major ways you do that here, I made that little GIF of a binary counting, but this here is a 4-bit binary counter. What you have that goes in here is basically the horizontal sync frequency of a analog television signal. That goes into the clock, and on each pulse of the clock, it counts. And how you make that a video game at the starting level anyway, is you have a couple of those wired together because there's a carry-out feature as soon as it reaches maximum count. And you can cascade that into 8-bit, 12-bit counters. And getting at that same frequency as analog television, you can get it to count the whole screen side by side, down all the way. I forget the horizontal resolution, but it's about 255, 256 lines going this way. And you can get it to synchronously move together so that it basically paints a whole raster of a television screen in the direct specifications of analog composite video. It basically acts like, imagine logic Lego bricks. You could take these things and put them together and build them up so that they do something that you want to do. Let's see. So why make video games in this crazy convoluted manner? I mean, you're putting like dozens of ICs on a single board just to make a couple of lines bat a dot around. Well, for the first part, computers are very expensive, especially early 70s. And logic ICs are very cheap. A computer in 1972 playing Space War, this is when Ted Dabney and Nolan Bushnell were originally looking to, because they wanted to do Space War as an arcade machine. I keep looking over here at Kevin Bunch, being like, "Am I right? Am I right?" They originally looked into doing it, and how they would do it as an arcade game is they would get a Data General Nova computer, which is one of the cheaper computers of the time, cheaper mini computers, and that was $10,000, which is very expensive and it will not pay for itself at quarter play or even dollar play, if you think about it. But these logic ICs were extremely cheap. You could have one of those NAND gates I listed earlier. I looked through some old electronics magazines. You could have those for 20 cents a piece. Some of the more expensive ones, like a counter IC, that'd be like $1.15. And those prices only came down more and more as time went by. I mean, you can look as late as like late 1970s issues of Radio Electronics or Popular Electronics, and you can get like a dozen for $1.50, $2. So way cheaper to do that. Pong, I believe, used only 66 in total. Does that sound right? Yeah, 66. And a board could be built, at least board-wise, for about $150 in materials, which is nothing at all. Now, of course, it doesn't include things like the monitor or the cabinetry, but to have a full working game and all you need is peripherals beyond that, it's a pretty good cost margin. And so, yeah, like I said, the money math just simply did not work out. So here's a matter of size. I just sort of wanted to show so this is a Pong clone board. This in particular is Tennis Tourney, because they all had wonderfully imaginative names like that. And so it's pretty big. It's a big circuit board, but it certainly isn't that. And that's a Data General Nova, and it sucks down power like crazy. That board only uses, I've hooked it up to 5 volts. It'll take about an amp and a half, and but that's not like a lot compared to that computer. So it's a big matter of difference there. So why are these games worth preserving, you may ask yourself? Well, obviously there's a lot of history. We have firsts. This is one that gets referenced a lot in one of the Discords I frequent. This is Ramtex Baseball from 74, and as far as we know, this is the first commercial video game with animated human figures in it. We don't have a clip because one doesn't exist yet. I have the boards that I'm working on. It's been very slow going, but I hope to be able to put soon video of it working, so, for researchers and such. And there's lots of fighting games. We have here, let's see if this will work here, Heavyweight Champ, which is one of the very first. Let's see if we can Alt-Tab over so you can see it. Whoopsie, there we go. There we go. And we can
a few years ago.
That's not showing. We get, let's see, how do we do that? Is it going to show? I don't know. Yeah, that's fine. Let's exit presentation mode just to do this real quick so you can see it happen, because it's good to see. And it's not showing there either. You know what? That's okay. We will continue from this slide. We'll do that. And but anyway, this clip is on YouTube. I will put that out there. This is on YouTube. It's a very interesting game. I wish I could figure it out. I was going to do the Alt-Tab thing. We did it a little bit earlier. Didn't quite work out. Unless, do you mind real quick helping me out? I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Yeah, because it's in the wrong menu for some reason. There we go. Wait,
nope.
No.
It worked before.
Yeah, I'm not sure here.
What pain in the tuchus. No worries. Oh. No. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
It's no big deal.
Try it one more time. I don't give up. Nope.
You can hear the...
Electronic games have come a long way since Pong
You can hear
exploded on the scene a
that,
few
that was
years
a phrase
ago.
that was used for literally every video game thing
Perhaps
for
owing its
forever.
inspiration to the
It's
hit
come a long
movie
way
Rocky,
since Pong.
One of the machines lets 98-pound
And
weaklings
this broadcast
play
was from
heavyweight champion.
1977, and they were already saying it. Okay, there you go. Yeah.
That's
So you
just
can see
one of
it
the
working.
Space Age games at the new Sega Center in Fashion Valley.
Sega. Yes. Sega Center. I love that. That's that one. Oh. Hello. Oh, it's opening up twice. We're going to get it. There you go. So that's this here. And this is Knights in Armor from 1976 from Project Support Engineering. Also a very early, what you could call a fighting game. It's a fascinating subject. This is the only known footage of it. I don't know anyone else who has it. If they do, they're not online, which is the case with a lot of this stuff. Thank you very much for helping me out with that. Those are the only YouTube clips. We have breakout ancestors, like Clean Sweep, which is sort of a game where instead of breaking the bricks, they go up like they sort of collects dots with the ball. But it's, it was directly referenced in Atari memos, like let's do something like Clean Sweep, or let's iterate on that. That's nowhere to play. Shoot 'em ups like Flying Fortress from Electra Games. These were very early shoot 'em up games. Now these wouldn't be like I don't think there weren't like lives. It was a timed game, much like a shooting gallery of the era. But it very much resembles what you would recognize as a shoot 'em up. And also a lot of early racing games, things like Grand Track 10, Wheels, which was born as Speed Race by Taito. And one of my favorite ones to talk about, which is Nürburgring 1, which is the first behind-the-wheel perspective driving game. And there were maybe 2 machines made. There's a photo out there on the internet, I think I actually have it in my folder here, of the back of one of those machines, and it was 25 boards is what required it to work, just filled with chips. I can't imagine having to work on that. So yeah, and then some of these games too can reveal some very interesting surprises. So in this book that I mentioned, there is a schematic and a design for a game called Stormtrooper Attack, and in it you control this little guy here. Here's your good guy. You control it with your nom, and you push fire to shoot up a laser at these stormtroopers who advance very slowly down the screen. Now that might sound somewhat familiar, at least in a very base, rudimentary. However, the interesting thing about this is that this book was published in April of 1978. Space Invaders did not come out into the North America until November of that same year. Now, is it coincidence? Probably. I cannot imagine Nishikado somehow finding this book and then building this, but it's still kind of interesting to. Right. But it's interesting to think about and to consider. Yes. Well, then it weren't copyright, nothing. These things can also tell us about like what the leisure culture was like at the time. Most of these were set up for 2 players, and the ones that weren't, the one-player games were timed affairs, which was very common in arcades at the time. You look at a lot of the shooting gallery games that were very popular, things that Midway would make, or very early Sega games would do that. And so you would play for about 60 to 90 seconds, whatever the operator would set it for. And, after that 60 or 90 seconds, you'd see what your score was. And that was it. Moved on to the next person. In fact, you can even see here these older ladies in Philadelphia are enjoying a couple of cocktails while they play tennis tourney together. And it was a common thing. You had them in game rooms, pool halls, places where you just sort of hung out for a long period, not necessarily arcades strictly as we understand it. A bit more of a varied thing. And you could see here, too, that the control panel actually is completely flat so they could lay their drinks on it. And cocktail tables were also very popular at the time, hugely popular. In fact, the most popular and best-selling of any variant of Pong was not made by Atari at all. It was made by Meadows Games, and it was a sit-down cocktail table that looked very chic for the 70s and had nice chrome joysticks. Actually, there's a quote I want to pull from this, from where I got this photo from. It's this very, it's a fun little quote that I got from the Philadelphia Inquirer. One of the operators was doing an interview with them, and he mentioned, he said, a lot of the locations that wouldn't have the old games, i.e. pinball, shooting galleries, are going for these video games because they're quiet, sophisticated, take up less space, and fit in with the classier decor. So this is classy, wood grain, chrome. These are things I live by. Let's see here. And there's a lot of unique features of graphics and sound on display. Now, a lot of this is done, with TTL digital logic, highs and lows, but there's still a lot of analog stuff that kind of sneaks its way in there. And it comes out in interesting ways. We saw it earlier there with the heavyweight champ, the way the fighters were sort of waving like this before they fell. And that's something you can do with analog timing circuitry, where you can do this like pulse width modulation and make stuff kind of move around very smoothly. And you can see it here, too, on Atari's Highway, which is from 75. And the way that the road is able to sort of curve and move around and things like that. And there's other interesting examples, too. I also would love to bring up, I should have made a slide for this, but there's one game that's interested me a lot, and I'd love to try it at some point. The Strong Museum has a machine of it, and it was, I don't remember the original name, something about like Motor Speedway by Sega, and it was rebranded in the States to be a video game based off of one Arthur Fonzarelli. And so you'd put the quarter in, and it would do a motorcycle sound and then play the Happy Days theme while you were, riding your motorcycle, which I just I'd use it with like an 8-track. An 8-track cartridge in there would make it do those sorts of things. And it was, it's an interesting use of analog tech. And also, these games are fun. Look at them. They're having a great time. The Pong games are really fun. Something that people, I think, miss off of the original Pong is that, it's not as slow as a lot of people remember. The ball bounces back and forth, yes, and it does start slow, but every few volleys, the speed ramps up. And so it can get real hectic when you're between two people and the ball goes, whip fast. There's other games like Death Race, which is a blast to play with two people. One of my good friends and colleagues, Ethan Johnson, he does a really great YouTube series called The History of How We Play. I usually meet up with him when I travel out to Chicago. We go to the Galloping Ghost, and they have a death race there, and it is so much fun to play. And they make this, because you're supposed to run over the gremlins, and they make this little screech sound when you hit them. And it's just kind of funny to play around with. But yeah, they're a lot of fun. Breakout's fun. Computer space with 2 players is really fun. I mean, talk about a hard game to come across. I mean, it's hard enough to come across the 1-player version. The 2-player version, which I would argue is a lot more fun, is very, it's hard to come across. So, is our friend Phil here? There he is. There's a guy. So, I got this from his study. This is, there was a game availability study that the Video Game History Foundation did. basically saying 87% of video games pre 2009 2010 are unavailable for people to play legally. Well, it turns out as you go further back, some of these are a little bit easier to access than others. You'll see here like 90 to 94. It's not too bad, but it drops off precipitously. And we get over here and over here. And this is where this era starts, this era of video games that I'm specifically talking about. This number is effectively 0. You can't play any of these. Pong is the only exception currently to be played legally. Yes, computer space is available in FPGA, so there is that. But that only makes 2. That's a lot missing. And it only gets slightly better with 75, 79. I believe the official number is like, 0.89%, which again is basically breakout Space Invaders. And that's kind of it. Space Invaders isn't really a TTL game, but it has a lot of TTL elements. I think that's how it does all the graphics and sound. It's just the gameplay logic that's computer based. So yeah, we're kind of SOL in a lot of this for now. So why are these games unavailable? Well, for one, traditional software emulation, the way that we tend to think about it anyway, is impossible. There are certain ways that people have tried to do it and kind of sort of do it. MAME has a thing called net lists, which sort of are able to mimic certain logic chips in software, but it's very abstracted. It's kind of a hat on a hat on a hat sort of thing. Same thing with dice is another one. And it's kind of, it has some functionality, but it's limited. Oh, I didn't plug that one in. We'll do that. There's low public accessibility of what still exists. I mean, not just from what I said earlier about the study, but just like where can you even go to play these things? The Strong has some. Galloping Ghost has a few. And even Galloping Ghost honestly does not have that many. I think all I can think of right now is Stunt Cycle, and that's kind of it. The Strong, like I said, has a few. They don't always have them out available to play, but they're there. Fun Spot, I think, has the most that you can just Fun Spot Arcade in New Hampshire. That's the one where that has the most. I think they have 10 of those games that you can just walk up and play. Most of them are Atari games. And soon, near my parents' house in Rochester, there's Arcade 80's, and they're going to have an anti-aircraft game up and running soon. They're still going to refurbish the room that they're putting it in, but anyway. A lot of these games were destroyed as they became unprofitable. That game I showed you earlier, Heavyweight Champ, there is not a single known extant cabinet of that game. It might exist. There might be somebody who's kind of hoarding it, or not really hoarding is the wrong word, but they're just not very online, and they kind of got their own little collection in their garage, and it's just for them, and they don't know about anybody else wanting to play it. But yeah, as far as we know, the game just doesn't. Nobody has it. And that's because, it could be because a lot of them were destroyed. There was a certain point, when video games got quickly more sophisticated, let's say Space Invaders, Galaxian, that hit game era created a situation where people were trying to top, game companies were trying to top each other and quickly. And that constantly put even recently older games out of style. And it got to a point where those older games, those simpler games, those more primitive experiences, got to a point where they could not be given away. I looked through some old issues of Playmeter and Replay magazine. These were trade publications in the 70s, 80s onward, for arcade operators, and in the back they would have classified sections, so you could buy, sell machines from other operators. And I stopped seeing any of those machines by 1981. Nobody was selling them anymore. And these games, most of these games weren't even 10 years old. And they could not get rid of them. And they needed the space. The space is at a premium. They got to make money. Those games don't make money. I don't care what happens. Throw it in the dumpster. And it's also not helped by the fact that since, a lot of these games have dozens of different little chips, they're not as easy to repair. You can't just pop out the RAM and pop in a new RAM. It's, the chip isn't firing at the right time. And why isn't firing at the right time? Well, I don't know. Let's see. What's it say on the schematic? And you unfold it and take a look and see what's there, and then pull out the oscilloscope and start doing that. And and then you buy a replacement chip, and it turns out the replacement chip doesn't quite work just right because the timing needs to be different. So you need to get the earlier version of that chip, and it cascades fast. Let's see here. It also, let me take a sip here. We're doing great. There's not very much interest or recognition in any of the companies of that era. And I would love to see, if you see, I would love to see just by a show of hands, like who recognizes these names I'm going to bring up. I'd be very curious. I know you will. You're good, Kevin. Yeah. So how about Mirko Games? Has anybody heard of them? Yeah, we got a Mirko fan right there. It took me a while to figure out what that logo was, but that's a little foosball guy, because they made foosball tables. But they also made video games. How about Meadows? Oh, there's one. All right, there are two. All right, Meadows fans. Cool. They made a game that I've been looking for the schematic for a long time called Drop Zone 4. It's been very elusive. If you have it, let me know. I want to scan it. How about Fun Games? I sure hate to play the other variety. And nothing quite screams entertainment like Allied Leisure Industries. Yeah, we got some fans. Yeah, all right, cool. And, the titles are also, they don't wow anyone today, like TV basketball or Take 7. Take 7 of what? It's a compilation of 7 games. One of them is an early Breakout clone. Very interesting. How about Flim Flam? It's a Pong clone. And my favorite, Watergate Caper. That's real. It's a code-breaking game. Yeah. So what can we do about it? Well, FPGAs, I think, are the sort of the plainest on its face solution for the issue. They're very elegant for this exact purpose. They are FPGA, meaning Field Programmable Gate Array. And they are, the main chip is this large one here. And it contains a bunch of what are called logic blocks. And you can arrange them, rearrange them to do what you want them to. You can make them into AND gates, OR gates, counters, whatever. And it will kind of become that. And we can program it with hardware descriptor languages, HDLs. The most popular one with MR would be Verilog. And the result, what you get out of it is a near one-for-one replicate of the original hardware. I mean, of course, there are still some little things here and there that do need to be tweaked and played with in order to get the result you're looking for. But it helps that you're dealing with less levels of abstraction that you have in software simulation. And you're really able to get right to what is on the schematic and build off of that. And that helps a lot. I keep thinking about learning Verilog, but I really don't need another project. No, I really don't. My wife's shaking her head. She's right. Let's see. Getting documents is very important for FPGAs, for FPGA development. Or even, if you're a weirdo like me, you just make board repros and put them into KiCad and manufacture them. It's a lot of work. Fun though. So we get our hands on these schematics, operation manuals, service bulletins that will tell us a lot about the circuits that we're dealing with, what's going on. I mean, getting things like service manuals, especially. I mean, schematic is obviously the big roadmap that helps with these sorts of things. But even getting things like the service manuals can be a big deal because often they'll have circuit descriptors in them. So if something is going wrong, they can say, they'll have troubleshooting guides, say put a probe here and look for this wavelength. And so it'll help to, give you some ideas of where to look instead of just unfolding this big thing and, doing your best. Service bulletins are good too because those will often have like little bits and pieces of ways that they found to, in a lot of cases, especially early on, a lot of these service bulletins have to do with eliminating static electricity. Because, the 70's, shag carpets everywhere. It's a problem. I believe, was it Pong that they found out that they could get free games by scuffing the carpet and then touching one of the screws on it, and you can get a free game. So that was a problem. But checking auction sites for these things is a big deal, and message boards, and getting in touch with local collectors. Auction sites meaning everything from eBay to Yahoo Auctions Japan, which I'd find unlikely you'd find that there though. But but even just a cursory Google search or whatever, I was looking desperately for a long time for the schematics for baseball, Ramtex baseball. And I found it one day just by randomly punching in Ramtech baseball schematics. And there was this random local auction house in Massachusetts that was selling all the schematics. It was $30. Nobody had bid. I put in a bid. I got it for $30. And now it's scanned and uploaded on the Internet Archive for all to see and not understand. I do a lot of work with this stuff, but it takes a lot of work to really comb through them. And of course, you could join ongoing preservation efforts like Gaming Alexandria. It's a great Discord, very supportive if you're really interested about. If you have a pet project, something you'd like to get into, Gaming Alexandria has been wonderful. Very supportive folks, kind people, and lots of resources. But going back just a little bit to the message boards and local collectors, there's so some of those would be Museum of the Game forums. A lot of collectors of the older games tend to be on there. I know it's a little gauche to be on there these days, but Facebook is where a lot of the admittedly older folks who have a lot of these games, that's where they congregate. And where Bronze Age collectors, I think, is where to go for that. And a lot of great, smart people who are willing to share a lot. I think about Andy's Arcade in particular, very freely and regularly uploads YouTube videos and pictures about what he's doing and documents how he's doing it and what's going on. It really is very helpful to understand this old technology. Check the time. Okay. High quality board photos are very helpful in documentation because the schematics are very often contain errors. And you can ask me how I know. And that's because every single schematic in this book has at least one error in it. It's a hell of a way to learn electronics, let me tell you. Luckily for me, circuit descriptors are in here. So you can read what it's supposed to do, and you can kind of figure okay, the pinout was mixed up here, or whatever. Or, again, with these, you can sort of save yourself the trouble and get these board pictures. This one is Wheels. It's a board I have that's waiting on me to do something with it. But that's the Taito game. And of course, if you have the boards, you'll also have the proms, which again don't really contain instructions so much as they contain bitmapped graphics that get used. Cars, tanks, spaceships, etc. And like I said there, yeah, you can build connections with people on the Bronze Age Arcade Facebook. Nice folks. So yeah, spread the word, get involved, have fun. Let organizations, if you guys, end up like saying like, yeah, I want to do something about this, talk to the Strong Museum about it. They're incredibly receptive to anybody who wants to do anything. I just, on an episode of my podcast, I had Lindsay Carano on, who is the curator of the electronic games at the Strong Museum. And she said, I had a 10-year-old come in for a book project to do something about Minecraft. And I was just like, yeah, let's set him up and have him, he can do research here. So if there's a project, something that you want to do, let places like that know. They'll help. Good folks there. And play them where you can find them. Like I said, there's not many. Galloping Ghost has a couple. Fun Spot has the most with 10. And but our arcade, it's arcade.com. They contain a database of arcades out there, and will list what games are at each of those arcades. And it's an interesting way to find out who has what. So, I mean, you're never going to find a bunch of these all grouped together, but like a random arcade in, let's say, St. Louis will have like Tank, or Marvin's Mechanical, the name's, what is it again? Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum in Ann Arbor, right? That's it. Yeah, Eau Claire, right. Yeah. They have a couple. The San Francisco Musée Mécanique has a death race. I'll take questions in just a second.
No, just wanted to
Oh.
mention there one. Like one of the barcades in Philly has Fire Truck.
There you go, Fire Truck. Fire Truck, I think, uses a 6502 processor, so I think that's not TTL strictly, but it does use TTL for sound and I believe graphics as well. So it's definitely adjacent and worth seeking out. It's fun. I encourage you to take up electronics. It's really fun. I took it up. I really went whole hog on it when the pandemic started. I'd tinkered here and there before, but I really went to town during the pandemic, and it's one of my favorite things to do. I repair video games more than I play them now, and it's a blast. I don't regret that trade-off one bit. Or you can do software if you have to, but do FPGA, whatever, it doesn't matter. Or if that's something you're just like, it's not really something that I don't have the brain for that. You can support people who are taking those steps, and there are some of those people who do have Patreons, things that you can support monetarily if you'd like to see more of that happen. The Discord for Mister has one of its pinned posts that has Patreon links that you could just go through. And people are doing this. One who doesn't have a Patreon but should is Jimmy Stones. He's been doing a lot. He's been trying to get an FPGA of Clean Sweep going. I believe he's done one of Blockade by Gremlin Graphics, which isn't so much. It's not pure TTL, but it's a build up to it. He's doing great work. And with all that, do we have any questions? And they can be about that photo. That's a prototype Charles Entertainment Cheese playing Stunt Cycle, if I believe. And Nolan Bushnell with just a hell of a hairdo, a great fro. Anyway, yes, questions, and I'll be repeating them up here so people can hear them. Right there, in the white and the mask. Yes, yes. About learning about electronics? Oh, yes. One of my very favorite ones, and one I recommend to everybody, is Make Magazine has a book called Make Electronics. And it is so no nonsense. It's down to earth. It's just lets you know, like, here's what a good solder joint looks like, you know. And it also encourages you to, like, buy cheap electronic stuff, and you're going to break some of it, and that's okay, because that's how we learn. And I love that attitude. And I would also really recommend watching some of the retro computer repair people that are on YouTube. In particular, I really enjoy Adrian's Digital Basement. And it isn't just because of his wealth of knowledge, but his attitude and how he reacts when he gets set back with something, you know, because you do get stumped doing this stuff. And, you know, he's like, he treats himself with a sense of humor, and he just says, like, oh, I got to go up and take a walk. And he goes up and takes a walk, eats dinner, and then comes back to it. And I think it's wonderful to have somebody modeling that attitude. That's very important for electronics. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Yes, you.
What's
No.
the name of the Discord?
And then
All the service manuals and schematics.
Oh, that's Gaming Alexandria. Gaming Alexandria, like the library that burned down. Yeah. Appreciate your candor and sense of taste. The person in front, yes, right there. Oh, I'd repeat the question, right? I didn't do that. He asked what the Discord was. It's Gaming Alexandria. Please go ahead. Yes.
It's really interesting. Is there anything like a white whale, a game that was incredibly popular, or in the day now, which is not totally extinct?
Okay. So he's asking what a white whale might be. Something that we really want. We want schematics. We want footage. We want boards. We want machines available. This is something, actually, I did a podcast about this topic few years ago when I was just starting to get my feet wet in it. And let's see. I think my white whale at the time, I mean, it really is Ramtech baseball. Like, I want to see that thing work so bad. Just because it has animated human figures. It's probably the first commercial game to do it. And there's no footage. I want footage. I want it. I got to have it. And there are some early pinball ones, like pinball. There's one called Super Flipper, which would be neat to see. In terms of ones without schematics, it really is a lot of the Japanese stuff. We have, unless it was localized and popular enough, like TV basketball we have, that was originally a Taito game, and then Midway brought it over. But things like Heavyweight Champ, we don't have anything on, and I would love so much to do that. Man Eater is another one. It's got a cabinet that's shaped like a great white shark, and you, it's funny. Did you have a suggestion, Kevin, to add to that?
I was going to say PT-109.
Oh, PT-109 by U.S. Billiards?
Processor game. It's
Yeah.
a game. It came out
Mirko.
behind the gunplay.
That's a Mirko one. They're the ones with the foosball guy. Anyway, thanks, Kevin. Yes.
Is there any like starting games that you like recommend like to get in if you like
To play and like to understand.
starting games to make like,
Oh, to make. Oh, yeah. So what he's asked is like something that's easy to make, something to start out with. Actually, so with a project that I put up a little earlier, I posted photos of it a while ago. I wonder if I go back to it. Let's see. It's going to take a bit. But so this is at the very beginning. There they are. I actually brought these with me, and I will be demonstrating these games at between 6 to 7:30 at the museum area. They were very gracious and gave me a little space to do that. Now I'll have that up available for people to play, and it's really it doesn't have a lot of room for demonstrating. So if you come in and you see there's a few people, Don't worry about it. You'll have a chance. I just don't want it overly crowded. You know, they were very gracious to give me a little bit of space, and I want to be mindful of that and not take advantage of the opportunity too much. But so he's asking what games are built, what games to build, and I would probably say this one right here. This is a tag game. I actually I put the schematics for this video board up on my GitHub. Which, I didn't put a slide with my website on this. Should have done that. It's memorymachinepod.com. Memorymachinepod.com. And through that, you can find links to my GitHub. And I have on there for the video board. And I'm about to put up there the game board for Tag, which is just this very simple game. It's not very much. I think it's 6 ICs total, in addition to what the video board is. So it's very simple. And this text really is good at explaining a lot of circuits. It's just the schematics are wrong. A bit of a problem, but the book is interesting, and it's available on the Internet Archive as well as some ham radio websites. That's what I would say. It's a lot of fun, and I'm so excited to hear somebody say that they were interested in building it. Man, we're going to get you guys into this. You're going to join my insanity. It's going to be great. But yeah, thanks for asking. I see one right there in the pink. Yeah.
So I noticed all of these games are primarily US-based. Have you gotten any interest outside of the US? For example, I know Soviet video games.
Yes. He is asking if I've looked outside of the States for these sorts of very early video games, and the answer is yes to a degree, but I'm trying my darndest to keep focus, because it's very easy. There's so much stuff out there, and the Soviet stuff is fascinating, and it looks so cool. These big blocky graphics, but honestly, the U.S. stuff has been challenge enough because it's just not out there, and not many people know about them. But there are. I would encourage anybody who wants to do that. Please do it. Thank you for your question. Was there somebody in the back? Way in the back over there. Yeah. Yes, I can.
Okay, so we have love testers in the electromechanical era, and then we had biorhythm and fortune tellers in the 70's. They didn't seem to make it over to the microprocessor era. Do you have any thoughts on why that is, or what's the deal with people who are really into fortune tellers, biorhythm machines, love testers, things like that?
Yeah.
Their story really ends in the 70's.
She's asking about a trend that was very popular in arcade machines, that being of the love testers and the biorhythm stuff and fortune tellers, and how they didn't really live much longer past the 70s. There were some attempts at this. I believe Nutting Associates did one that was like a horoscope type stuff. They didn't do much with it. I just think it didn't garner the attention that it once did. There are very interesting examples of that era it's outside of this scope. The one I'm really interested is called Morgana. And it's one with it's got like a white dummy head in it, and it's surrounded by black velvet. And that has a 16 millimeter projector that projects a face onto it that reads you your fortune like this without blinking. It's fascinating. Look it up, Morgana. It's cool. But thank you for your question. I wish I knew more to tell you. Red shirt.
I can actually answer her question.
Oh, please do.
There's two parts. The first was analog to digital converters to actually just do a lot of the older styles, because it would be a little bit of current AC, so you felt the tingle, the magic going through you.
Ah.
It does not play well digital circuits.
No, it does not. Yes.
So they actually had a hidden cost that turned out to be quite a bit more. And the second one is a little more esoteric. A whole bunch of the people and companies that were happy to do the analog part thought that they were demon summoning sigils when they went and saw microprocessors.
Yeah.
It's still a very common thought today that there's actually a large, very small
Oh, wow.
They dropped the interest.
Wow, that's fascinating. When is your article coming out? Seriously, I'll read that. That's great.
I already told you I could write, but I can't.
Yeah.
I lose interest 5 minutes in.
Oh, I understand that. That's okay. I feel you, buddy. But that's fascinating. Yeah. Yes. 5 minutes. Yes. Yes.
Yes. Do you have any recommendations for groups that could help with preserving computers of around the same era? I've got one in particular. I'm a collector of microprocessor-based computers, 1975-ish to early 80s.
Yeah.
One in particular, CyberVision 2001. It is unique computer. It's like
Did you bring it up yesterday at a panel?
I kind of did. I don't know if you were. I guess you must have been.
Yeah, because in relation to the 1802 processor.
Yeah. We were talking
Yes.
about it with the Bentley Astro case.
Yeah.
I'm like an amateur when it comes to
Uh-huh.
repair, and I just don't want to fry the thing, but it's also not preserved.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out where to go with this thing.
So he's asking specifically about hardware restoration and what should be done, where to go about that and get information about that. There's a lot of communities in that regard there that are extremely helpful, extremely kind, patient, help you learn anything you want to know. One of the ones I really like is from Noel's Retro Lab, is a YouTube, Noel, Noel's Retro Lab, and he has a YouTube YouTube series where he does that sort of thing, and he has a Discord. There's also one from More Fun Making It. That one's based out of the UK, but a lot of other people go through there as well. And if you want to, I could show you after the show too, if you'd like. We can get you some stuff there. I think we have time for one more question. Yes, you there, the sunglasses.
So I was just curious, what's the process like if somebody actually finds one of these, one of these machines, lost game,
Mhm.
and so what? They're trying to get it to someone like you and what, like a handful of other people who might actually be able to get it working. And
Mhm.
the next step is the next step then actually trying to dump it somehow so people can get it to run on the FPGA device, or do you have any like success stories like that? Or
Well, the thing is there's really very little to dump. Well, the question, yes, so I repeat the question. The question was like what to do if you get your hands on the board, who do you take it to, what gets done with it, etc. And the answer is, well, there's not really much to dump. The thing to do, I would think, if you do actually have the board and can get it running, take some footage of it running. What I'm trying to do right now is to get it to a point where I can do direct capture footage, but it's kind of hard because the video signal, these things don't put out like typical NTSC. It expected you to have a monitor that you could fiddle with to get whatever it put out just right. So it's a little weird, but there are people out there who are doing that. And I think I would point you again to the Bronze Age Arcade Facebook and get to certain people who could do that. There's a guy online, I wish I could remember his name, but his YouTube name is Dillweed. And but he has like a ton of these machines that he just he demonstrates on YouTube and things like that, and it's super cool. But he has a lot of information. He has a lot of passion for this era. We talk a lot about it, and then you could reach out to him, honestly.
getting it to run on like an FPGA device is more like looking at like just like schematics and output. Like
Yes. So he's saying like getting FPGA, like putting it on FPGA is more like paying attention to schematics than like dumping anything. And the answer is yes. That's your source code is the schematic. Yeah. So yeah, that's I think almost more important than the board in some cases. Board's great to have, obviously. I wouldn't poo-poo that. But yeah, I think, is our time done? Are we, what time are we at? Yeah, I think we're all done. I saw other people. I'm sorry. But you can come see me afterwards. And again, at 6 o'clock, I will be in the museum with a couple of these machines, with a couple of these builds, and tennis tourney. And we could play it, look at it, mess around with it, whatever. So thank you very much.